Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody in between, and everybody on the outsides of those extremes, I'm your host, AJ Graham, and I welcome you to the AJ Verse Podcast, where I use my world of words, we break them down into syllables, and we talk about this silly bull we call life. So today is going to be story time, somewhat. I'm going to tell a personal story about how I almost stopped watching wrestling. And I've been a big wrestling fan since I was about 5. 1990 was the year. My mom ended up leaving the TV on whatever she was watching, and then she left the room, and it came on, and I was like, "Hey, wrestling, cool." Started watching it. Been watching it ever since. Befriended some guys who also were into wrestling in high school. We kept in touch after high school, mainly through watching wrestling, and we would get together every pay-per-view and watch whatever pay-per-view was up. So the date that I almost stopped watching wrestling was March 30th, 2003. It was WrestleMania 19. And it was a match between Booker T and Triple H. Now, some backstory of this match. So, they do the Royal Rumble every year in January, where it's 30 men. They start with 2 guys in the ring every minute or whatever, some random interval that they have. Another person comes in the ring, and you eliminate people by throwing them over the top rope. If you're the last person standing, you win. So, that year's Royal Rumble was won by Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was going for the WWE title, which was property of SmackDown. So that means Raw needed a contender for their belt, the World Heavyweight Championship. So they had a Battle Royal, 20-man Battle Royal, which a Battle Royal is different than the Royal Rumble. Battle Royal still got to throw people over the top rope, but everybody starts at the same time, so they had a 20-man Battle Royal. And the last 2 people standing were Booker T and The Rock. Now, if you're a smart mark like me, which means, smart mark, you're a smart fan, you know how wrestling goes, you know how things go. You're like, oh, well, shit, The Rock's going to win this one. That's the guy. Cool, The Rock's going to go against Triple H at WrestleMania. Well, they swerved us, and Booker T won. And I'm like, oh, shit, okay, all right, cool. I'm going to give Booker T some time to shine. So after winning the next week, Triple H comes out, and he cuts a promo saying, people like you don't get to be world champion. You need to know your role. You need to just go ahead and dance and be an entertainer like you are with your nappy hair. Now, I know you guys are hearing that. You're like, oh, that's racist and, all that stuff. Now, for me, I'm like, okay, if they want to use race as a plot device for a storyline, side note, for people who don't know, pro wrestling is a work. Pro wrestling is scripted like any other TV show. They got producers and directors and all that stuff. Okay, cool. Moving on. But yeah, Triple H is coming out here saying all of this, sly, racist shit. And, you hear that stuff and you're like, well, damn, like they really went there. Fine. Now, I've done some research about this, and I was trying to find out who wrote that promo for Triple H, because sometimes back in early 2000s, people would write the promos, or they would give them bullet points like, oh, hit this bullet point, but still get your bullet point, still make do this promo. And I was trying to find some sources of who wrote that nappy line. And I listened to Bruce Pritchard, who is one of the producers for WWE. He has a podcast. And I was listening to the podcast, and he has another guy who was kind of like grilling him on this storyline. And he's like, well, who wrote that? Who said that? And of course, Bruce Pritchard is like, well, I don't know who wrote that. I don't remember it and all this stuff. So I'm like, well, did Did Triple H go off the script and he say that shit? Because the nappy line, for me, that's what made it racial at the time. But it gets worse. So, WWE started framing Booker T as this rags to riches story where, he's the youngest of 8 kids and his dad died early, and his mother wasn't around and they had to go and get water out of a well and all this stuff. And then Booker T ends up running in with the wrong crowd, gets arrested. Booker T goes to jail. They show his mugshot and everything. Cool. And Booker T doesn't shy away from it. He owns up to it. I was running with the wrong crowd and I spent time and I had a long time to think about it, and I made sure that I never went back. Cool. That's the rags to riches story that they framed. So the week after that, Ric Flair comes out as Booker T's talking, and Ric Flair is like, you got 2 options. You can meet us at the airport and come and get our bags and put on that chauffeur's hat and drive us to the arena and carry our bags in and all that stuff. Booker T ends up beating him up and all that stuff. And then he goes and finds Triple H in his locker room. And Triple H is like washing his hair or his face, or I don't know. Triple H has a humongous face. Like around this time, like he shaved his beard, and he has a big nose, and just he has a lot of face. So I don't know if he's washing his hair or his face, but he's doing something in the sink. And Booker T comes in, and Triple H looks over, and he's all nonchalant, like, "Hey, Book." And Triple H reaches in his pocket, pulls out a $1 bill, and throws it at him, and tells him to go get a towel. Booker T beats him up. So they frame this very, they frame this as like this bigoted bully guy is going to get his comeuppance. So now we get to the actual match at WrestleMania 19, Booker T versus Triple H, with Ric Flair in Triple H's corner. Now, the actual match was really good. It was a damn good match. Like, I suggest you go watch it. It was a clinic of what to do in the ring if you're trying to be a wrestler. Now, with Triple H being the bad guy and having his friend out ringside, Ric Flair is helping. He's being the bad. They're being the bad guys. They're cheating and all this stuff, and they're working on Booker T's leg. Like, they're beating his leg up, and Triple H hits his move, the pedigree. And Booker T, he falls down. Triple H falls down, and Triple H slowly crawls over to pin him. And it took 23 seconds from him hitting the move and him crawling over to pin Booker T. And he beats Booker T. Now, at the time, when I was watching this, I was so mad, I took my shoe off and threw it at my friend's wall. Where he had a projection thing, and we were watching it, like he projected it onto the wall. Took off my shoe and just threw it at the wall, like hard. Like I left it like a mark on the wall. Like I was pissed, and I was just like, do I want to keep watching this? Like, what the fuck? Now, with me doing my research before I started this podcast, I wanted to make sure I heard what was the backstage production over this match. So for the longest, I heard that Triple H had changed the outcome of the match beforehand. And I listened to podcasts from Bruce Pritchard, and he was saying that they always had the plan of Triple H winning. They didn't know who he was going to go against at the time. And, for WrestleMania 19, they wanted to make it Brock Lesnar's night. Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle, and Brock Lesnar tried to do that shooting star press. He messed up. He fucked up. He landed on his face and all that stuff. But, that was supposed to be Brock Lesnar's, like they wanted the spotlight on Brock for that night. So, I was wrong on thinking that, Triple H got it changed. And So there was some whisperings that it was going to be Scott Steiner versus Triple H at WrestleMania. Vince didn't want that because honestly, Scott Steiner was just the drizzly shits in the ring around that time. And he didn't want it to be too repetitive because him and Triple H already had 2 matches. So they put Booker T in that spot. Now, being older and being that I've been in the wrestling business and, it's all a show, I understand that with wrestling, the good guy can't always win. But when you frame your whole fucking story around some racist sounding shit, dance for me, you're an entertainer, nappy hair, the good guy needs to win that match. Period. Like, flat out, the good guy needs to win. And, I listened to some more people who worked in WWE, worked on that match, worked on that show, and they were saying, like, oh, well, we thought that was okay because The Rock said something about Booker T's hair. But The Rock is part black. Like, that, that won't register with people. Like, that is just, whatever. That's how black people talk. Nobody will say anything. But when Triple H, a white man from Greenwich, Connecticut, says nappy hair, it's not the same thing. Now, there's a juxtaposition with this storyline. And the producers have gone on record saying that it wasn't about race. They made this about WWE wrestlers versus WCW wrestlers because WWE had just purchased WCW, and Booker T was a champion in WCW. And Triple H mentioned it in his promo, saying like, "Oh well, weren't you champion in WCW around the same time that Jeff Jarrett was champion and Vince Russo and David Arquette? Like, oh, that's you're sounding real bad right now, basically." So that's one of those things. Like, I don't know. You can say that all you want, but if Triple H wouldn't have said nappy, it wouldn't have been a problem. Because, if he just would have been like, "Oh, you're an entertainer, just go ahead and dance for us," that's still kind of sketchy. But there were other wrestlers that were like from WCW that were like entertainer types, like the Hurricane. The Hurricane was, he was a superhero and he was goofy and all that stuff. But that nappy line just never has sat right with me. And you can go Google it. Go Google Triple H versus Booker T WrestleMania, and you'll see a bunch of articles talking about how racist the storyline was. But now we fast forward to WrestleMania 35. And that was Kofi Mania, where they kind of went down the same path. Not with Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan's not going to do that type of storyline. He's not the type of guy. He's not going to push that type of envelope. But they did use Vince McMahon to say some subtle things like, "Oh, well, Kofi, like, oh, you're a great entertainer and people love you, and you're with the New Day and you make people laugh and you throw your pancakes, and you'll go into the Hall of Fame, but not alone. You're going there with the New Day, and we don't know if somebody like you can be champion." And I was like, here we go again, motherfuckers. They really gonna do this shit again. And the outcome was different this time. Kofi actually won. Kofi Kingston was the first black male to win any kind of belt at WrestleMania. The first black person to keep a belt at WrestleMania was Shelton Benjamin. The first black person to win a belt, period, at WrestleMania was, I believe, Naomi at WrestleMania 33, I want to say. But we haven't been well represented at this particular show. Also, WrestleMania is like the Super Bowl for WWE. But now I'm seeing WWE doing something. I'm like, I don't know if this is like, you guys are finally getting the picture and like, oh, maybe we need to be more inclusive with people besides white males. I don't know if they're like, they feel guilty. Like, I kind of feel like the Kofi storyline was an apology of WrestleMania 19 to black people. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but now I'm seeing Triple H. Triple H is now in a place of power when it comes to backstage stuff, pushing people, stuff like that. Triple H is actually responsible for Bianca Belair's push right now. Bianca Belair, who, black woman, main event at WrestleMania with Sasha Banks, another black woman. And that was the first time that's happened, two black people at that, fighting over the SmackDown title. And, Bianca wins, which is also her birthday. That's so fucking cool. And her husband, who's also a wrestler, was there. And, he's been a champion in WWE. And right now, as of recording, the two champions right now, Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley, is two minorities. Bianca's still champion. And one of the champions on Raw, they're black. It's been a lot more inclusive. WWE's doing better with how they treat women wrestlers, which from 2000 to now is a drastic change. But that's a story for another time. So you can follow me on all the social medias: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, all those. I'm Alonzo Jules on all of those. I'm also Alonzo Jules on YouTube, if you're not watching this on YouTube. Also, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And if you're trying to find me on Facebook, you can search for the AJverse. So I've been AJ Graham. Thank you for listening, and love, peace, and fish grease.